Welcome to a Friday night edition of Chicago Sports Tonight. Lou Canellis alongside Cassie Carlson. Hope you enjoyed the Christmas holiday. We sure did. Plenty to celebrate if you're a Bears fan, right? Time for the Chevy Drive Chicago NFC North preview. And you were at practice all week. Give me an idea of what it was like with the coaches and the players. Are they still in a state of shock, disbelief that they pulled that off last Saturday? Or do they believe that they're never out of it?
I don't think this team ever believes they're out of the game, and that Green Bay finish was just one example of 6 that we've now seen on the season, which is a new NFL record, and it's been so impressive, and the way they've been able to turn the page is equally as impressive, because I talked to Jade Walker one-on-one this week. You can catch that on Bears Game Day Live Sunday morning, and I asked him about the feeling, the reaction, everything he had, having the biggest catch of his life and career coming in only his second catch of his career to send that game into overtime. He's like, honestly, I kind of put it behind me. We're on to 1-0 each week, and so for the team to have that mindset each and every week, and it's been consistent throughout the season, has been impressive. And it's a kind of a weird week. They were off on Christmas Day, so the practice schedule gets mixed up a little bit. They had a long practice on Wednesday, Christmas Eve, and then they have to travel pretty far out to Santa Clara.
And then they practiced again today. Ben Johnson talked about his goals this week. Step number 1 was to get to 11 wins, because there's been one 10-win team that did not make the playoffs. Step 2, to win the division, which they can do with a win over San Francisco or a Green Bay loss to the Ravens on Saturday night. And then step 3, to clinch the number 1 seed. Bears need help, though. Seahawks have to lose this Sunday at Carolina, or the 49ers, the final game of the regular season. Will the Bears win step 2, and what are the chances of them capturing number 3?
Well, what you like about winning step 2 is that they control their own destiny in that sense, because this could all be over the division race by the time they take the field Sunday night in Santa Clara if the Packers just lose to the Ravens. Now, you look at that matchup, sounds like Lamar Jackson might not play, and then you have Jordan Love who's trying to play, so you don't want to leave it in the hands of Green Bay. Step 3 would be a little bit tougher. You know, the NFC West is so weird this year. It's like, is that the best division? Because they have those 3 teams right there who are riding with the Rams, Seahawks, and 49ers. And it's also just the fact that going to Santa Clara, I have like PTSD from last year going there, because that's when Thomas Brown coached his first game. We're like, oh, this is going to be a galvanizing moment, and they got crushed.
Right.
Tough place to play, and as I mentioned before, a tough place to travel. It's just a long flight at the end of the season. And so then you're looking at the Week 18 matchup against the Lions, and Ben Johnson was asked today, do you think Dan Campbell's going to rest his guys? He's like, I'm not thinking about that game, but in my mind, I'm like, the Lions are not going to let Ben Johnson go to Chicago in division and then take the division in his first year. That's just no chance that's happening.
I heard something really interesting earlier today. The Bears are getting ready to face the Niners, and in the last 6 meetings, counting what's going to happen on Sunday, the Bears will play the Niners with their 6th different head coach in those last 6 meetings. All right, Caleb Williams, he received a plus 2.0 grade from Pro Football Focus. Little explanation here. The only pass in the league, by the way, to earn that mark this season. It's reserved for, according to Pro Football Focus, the pinnacle of quarterback play, the rarest, most jaw-dropping throws in football. 370,000 passes Pro Football Focus has given out, only 29 plus 2.0 grades for a pass, and this one came obviously on the bomb from Caleb Williams to DJ Moore to win it. What was Caleb like this week when he met with you guys?
Well, I think he felt like he kind of has a chip on his shoulder. And let's remind everyone that Caleb Williams was one of the top recruits coming out of high school. He was the number 1 overall pick. He won the Heisman. And then he started talking about how people started counting him out. They started doubting him. And I feel like that was the national narrative last year going into this season. But dating back to when he was a young kid, I don't think this kid was ever really doubted that much. He was destined to be great. And he was told to us is going to be the next coming of Patrick Mahomes potentially.
Right.
So I don't think it's really much of a surprise, but the way he was like, I was never fast enough, I was never tall enough, like all these things that he obviously keeps in his mind. I think he was one of those confidence moments for the quarterback, similar to it was after the game 2 weeks ago when he's like, yeah, I can make any throw. Like this guy is feeling some sort of arrogance, which I think you want from your franchise quarterback.
I remember covering Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan used to come up with his own ways to create a chip on his shoulder, before he would go into a game. Did you get the feeling like maybe Caleb Williams has these own things that he creates in his mind that allows him to get that chip on his shoulder before he plays teams?
Yeah, and it's not really the first time the Michael Jordan comparison has been made this season. He also had that when talking about, just getting those first couple shots and the MJ mindset. That doesn't surprise me because Caleb Williams, yes, he needs to motivate himself, and I think external things do motivate him a little bit, but we know this guy is an interesting dude, and I think he has his own thoughts going on in his mind too.
All right, Ben Johnson today was asked after a big finish like last Saturday's, does that finish give Williams a boost with his confidence?
I think he's gotten more comfortable in the offense and what we're asking him to do throughout. I don't think he lacks for confidence to start with, and so I don't necessarily think that that's a confidence builder. But I do think the best thing about that was it looked exactly like that in practice, and we've had a few plays like that over the course of the season where what we did in practice has transitioned almost identical to the game, and that's a credit to our coaching staff putting in the plays and seeing it through, and the players kind of bringing it to life like that. I think it's pretty cool when that happens. Hopefully we have a little bit more of that go on this week.
Yeah, let's hope so. One of the other side-by stories that I was fascinated with coming out of the Caleb Williams press conference with you, the media, the other day, was this relationship that he thought was sour with Ben Johnson. Tell me if I'm wrong. I thought he said, I don't think Ben Johnson liked me at the beginning of the year.
He said it was a little fragile, which is one of those Caleb words that never got a good laugh out of it. I think that's just who Ben Johnson is, because Ben Johnson elaborated on it today, and he said you could ask Drew Petzing, who's the offensive coordinator with the Arizona Cardinals. They worked together at Boston College, didn't talk to each other for maybe 2 months, and then Drew stood up in Ben's wedding. He's like, that's just maybe how I am, and that doesn't surprise me as a new head coach coming into a new organization that needs a culture shift, and he's trying to get this quarterback to play at an elite level. And we saw that play out in real time during training camp, all those moments when they were going at it. And Ben Johnson, remember practice number 1 where he threw the first team offense out of the drill? Let's not forget that. That was the standard that he was trying to set, and also the expectation that Caleb Williams was going to be treated no differently than every other player on that roster, which is different from years past.
That's the key. Ben Johnson came to town to teach and lead, not be anyone's friend. Today, Johnson had this reaction.
I would say probably a lot of my closest friends would tell you the same thing. So I think of a guy that was in my wedding. One of my best men was Drew Petzing, who's the coordinator for Arizona. I think he would tell you the first 2 months that we were together at Boston College, we didn't say a whole lot to each other, but it's just kind of how it is sometimes. I treat Caleb like I do the rest of the guys. I love all these guys, and comes from a good place. I just want them to become the best player that they can be and grow as men as well. So I think he understands that, and we're at a good spot right now.
Let's hope so. Before we move on from Caleb, I was looking back at Caleb's numbers before the end of the game heroics against the Packers. And if the Bears don't get that onside kick, his numbers are 12 for 24 for 151 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Does that worry you?
Yes, but the resilience of the team as a whole and playing all 3 phases has shown up now, as I mentioned before, 6 times. And that's what was pointed to a number of times by everybody in the locker room after that game, is like, and we felt that in the press conference, in the press box too, that there was no life on that Bears offense for the entire game. And it took one moment to get a spark. And you have to credit special teams, Cairo Santos for winning NFC Special Teams Player of the Week, for being perfect in those insane windy conditions. And then the onside kick, and I forget the percentage exactly of onside kicks that work, but Richard Hightower said this week that Cairo Santos practices those so much to the point where he tells them to, like, hey, we need to stop, we need to move on to the next thing. And clearly it showed up in a game-like moment in the biggest moment of the season, and it paid off.
I can tell you this, that the Bears had a 0.5% chance to win that football game before they recovered the onside kick. Before we wrap up this segment, first of all, what worries you about the Niners?
What worries me about the Niners is they have not punted in the month of December. And although they don't have any of those big name receivers, they do have George Kittle, who's going to be questionable heading into this game, a game time decision, and Christian McCaffrey, who's about to have a 1,000 receiving and 1,000 rushing season.
All right, that is going to wrap up this segment.